Big news for Las Vegas Raiders fans. General Manager John Spytek recently appeared on a podcast and shared some interesting thoughts, especially about Ashton Jeanty and the running back position. But what really caught everyone's attention was how his own son reacted to the idea of the Raiders passing on Jeanty. Not only that, but reports say the Raiders actually tried to trade for a running back. This could mean Spytek isn't as sold on Jeanty as people think. Plus, we've got some major rule changes that could shake up the game. We'll break down the 4 biggest ones in just a moment. But first, if you love the Raiders and want to stay updated with all the latest news, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and hit that bell icon. Now, let's get into it. Spytek joined a 25-minute podcast where he seemed relaxed and open about a lot of things. At one point, the conversation turned to Ashton Jeanty, and that's when things got really interesting. His 10-year-old son is a huge fan of Jeanty and made it very clear that if the Raiders don't draft him at number 6, he's ready to find a new team to support. His son even went straight to Mark Davis and told him, "If my dad doesn't take Ashton Jeanty, he's doing a bad job." That's some serious passion. But Spytek's response was even more telling. He said his son is motivated by fantasy football and touchdowns, not team building. That one statement might give us a hint about what Spytek really thinks. Does he truly see Jeanty as a top draft pick? Or is he looking for something different? And what about the rumors of a running back trade? There's a lot to unpack here, so let's break it all down. When John Spytek was asked if his son watches game tape, his answer was straightforward. No, he just watches highlights on YouTube. Then he told his son, "Jack, those are just highlights. You have to watch the full game. Don't be fooled by the best moments." That statement says a lot about how Spytek sees things. Watching just the highlights doesn't tell the full story of a player. It hides weaknesses. Could this be a hint that Spytek isn't fully convinced about drafting Ashton Jeanty? Let's break it down. Spytek was the only general manager who attended Boise State's Pro Day. That's strange, especially because it happened on the same day as LSU and Ohio State's Pro Days, 2 schools loaded with top NFL talent. LSU and Ohio State had around 30 potential draft picks, while Boise State only had 2. So why did Spytek choose to be there? At the time, many thought it meant he was seriously interested in Ashton Jeanty. If the Raiders want Jeanty, they'd likely have to take him with the 6th overall pick because he's expected to go in the top 15. But now, with Spytek's latest comments, is he really that high on Jeanty? Or could this be a smokescreen? Maybe he's trying to bait another team into making a move. Could he be hoping the Chicago Bears or another team will panic and trade ahead of the Raiders to take Jeanty? Or maybe he's setting things up for a trade-down scenario, where the Raiders move back and still land a player they really want. Another thing to consider, Spytek made these comments in a casual setting, where he wasn't being super careful with his words. But what he said about fantasy football versus team building makes a lot of sense. Winning in the NFL isn't about picking the flashiest player, it's about building a strong foundation. And right now, let's be real, the Raiders don't have an elite quarterback who can carry the team on his own. They have a solid QB in Gardner Minshew, but without a strong offensive line, he won't have time to work. And let's be honest, the Raiders' O-line is a major concern. So, is running back really the position they should be focusing on? Or does Spytek have a bigger plan in mind? Let's talk about the biggest issue the Las Vegas Raiders need to fix, the offensive line. Right now, it's far from elite, and if this team wants to compete at the highest level, that needs to change. There's no doubt that Jackson Powers Johnson is one of the top center prospects, and Colton Miller is a solid top 20 tackle. But beyond those two, the rest of the offensive line is a big question mark. The guard positions? Unproven. DJ Glaze at right tackle? Uncertain. Glaze might develop into a franchise player, but at this moment, there's no clear sign that he's going to be an elite tackle. When you look at past rookies like Penei Sewell, Rashawn Slater, and Christian Darrisaw, you could immediately tell they had the talent to dominate. They had great movement, football awareness, and the ability to handle top pass rushers. With Glaze, that same dominance hasn't shown yet. Of course, he could improve in year 2, but that's not something the Raiders can just hope for. Even John Spytek hinted at this when he was asked about the right tackle position. He said, "We have DJ Glaze, but we also have 8 to 9 picks, and we'll look to add competition as well." That statement makes it very clear the Raiders aren't sold on their offensive line yet, and their recent actions prove it. The team brought in 2 offensive tackle prospects for visits, Will Campbell and Charles Grant. Now, here's where things get interesting. Some scouts think these 2 players might fall to the second round if teams view them as guards instead of tackles. But at the same time, the Raiders could consider them at number 6 overall. Another wild factor? There's been some drama around arm-length measurements at the Combine. Some players might have been measured incorrectly, and that could be why the Raiders wanted a closer look at Will Campbell. His reported 32¼ inch arms might not be accurate, so the Raiders could be checking if he's truly a fit for tackle. The bottom line is this: the Raiders don't have a locked-in offensive line right now. They have a strong defensive line, but if the offense is going to keep up, they need more protection up front. And here's the big question. If the offensive line isn't solid, does drafting Ashton Jeanty even make sense? A talented running back is great, but without a strong O-line, can he truly succeed? Something to think about as the Raiders make their next moves. Did the Raiders try to trade for a running back? Reports suggest they did. Some sources claim Las Vegas had serious interest in Kenneth Walker, the Seahawks running back. While it's not fully confirmed, there's enough buzz to believe the Raiders explored this move. Now, let's break this down. Walker was a second-round pick and had a strong rookie season under Pete Carroll. But in his most recent year, his production dipped, only 3.7 yards per carry. With Seattle having other running back options and Walker entering the final year of his contract, it makes sense that the Seahawks might consider moving him. If they did trade him, it wouldn't cost much, maybe a 4th or 5th round pick. For the Raiders, this raises an interesting question. Should they make a move for a veteran back like Walker? Or should they focus on drafting a younger, cheaper option? The NFL draft could easily offer solid running backs in later rounds, so the team has options. But here's the real issue: the offensive line. John Spytek has built winning teams before, and he knows that success isn't about flashy highlights, it's about strong fundamentals. And right now, the Raiders' offensive line isn't built to dominate. Imagine this scenario. The Raiders face Philadelphia, a team with one of the most powerful defensive lines in the league. They go up against Chicago, which has 3 dangerous edge rushers and elite defensive tackles. How does this O-line hold up? The answer: not well. That's the biggest concern. Top playoff teams have dominant defensive lines. If the Raiders don't fix their protection, it doesn't matter who's running the ball or who's playing quarterback, they won't be able to compete. So, what's the solution? The Raiders must solidify the offensive line. They could draft a franchise right tackle and move DJ Glaze inside to guard, where he might actually be a better fit. That would give them a stronger, more balanced unit instead of hoping their current lineup magically improves. At the end of the day, whether the Raiders go after Kenneth Walker or any running back, it won't matter if they don't fix the trenches first. The clock is ticking. Will the Raiders make the right moves before it's too late? Major NFL rule change that could impact the Raiders. As the Raiders prepare for the new season, there's a game-changing rule update that could directly affect them. The NFL is introducing Sony's Hawkeye technology, a high-tech camera system designed to improve ball spotting and play reviews. Here's what this means for the Raiders. 6 8K cameras will be installed in every stadium, capturing plays from multiple angles. Unlike before, where broadcast cameras were not synced, these cameras will all record simultaneously to ensure accurate replays. Officials will now have a clearer view of crucial plays, reducing bad spots, controversial first down calls, and missed out-of-bounds rulings. This could be a big deal for a team like the Raiders. Over the years, we've seen questionable officiating impact games, especially on short-yardage plays or tight sideline catches. Now, instead of relying on old-fashioned chain measurements or inconsistent replay angles, the league will have precise video evidence to make faster, more accurate calls. Imagine this scenario. The Raiders need a crucial fourth down conversion late in the game. The old system might have led to a controversial spot, costing them possession. With this new technology, there's no guessing. The exact position of the ball will be crystal clear. However, there's still one big question. Who controls the final decision? Will the referees fully rely on this system, or will subjective calls still play a role? At the end of the day, this new rule could either help or hurt the Raiders, depending on how it's used. But one thing is clear. The days of inconsistent officiating might be coming to an end. The NFL is changing, and the Raiders will have to adapt to the new era of high-tech officiating. NFL rule changes that could impact the Raiders. As the NFL evolves, so do the rules, and the Raiders need to be ready. This season, 3 major rule updates could shake things up in Las Vegas. 1. No more bad calls. Replay, assist expansion.